So, why is it there is a Nexus recalling to your base? Well, that could only mean one thing. You're up against Florencio, a Protoss now turned random player who comes up with the most unorthodox ways to make his opponents rage into submission. First nicknamed the Sewer Mermaid from Pig due to his filthy playstyle, his creativity has gripped the community in a variety of ways. So I took the opportunity to sit down with Florencio and wade through the sewage and find out how to play just like him. First of all, thank you, Florencio, for joining me on the show. It's really good to have you. Why don't you do for me and the audience who don't know you, like few as they may be, describe yourself? How would you describe yourself?
Just a very down-to-earth person. Yeah, I just love art. I love creativity.
Yeah.
And I smile a lot.
Originally known as a Protoss player, but now I guess you've branched out and you currently play like every race now, right?
Yeah, I used to play Brood War back in the days in '98, and for a good while. When StarCraft 2 came out, I started playing, of course, Protoss till just recently I started playing random. About a year ago.
Yeah.
I just kicked into random.
I want to say you're famous, but you're also infamous at the same time. And has that been a boon or kind of like a way down for you to be so well known for your strategies?
That one's a hard one because I don't feel it, but at the same time it's there.
Yeah.
Because in StarCraft 1, one of my main passions is to help people get better at the game. We didn't really have streams and all that, so I would do a lot of one-on-ones or try to do like video, like, hey, here's the replay, let's all watch it or something, and they would watch and see the strategies. So I kind of got used to it in StarCraft 1, where I had that focus where a lot of players are like, hey, play this guy, oh, play that guy, and they would just be like sending me to different people, and I'm like, okay, but I kind of grew out of that part and just started just developing just on a personal scale versus competitively. So I got that out the way and start in Brood War, and I changed it up in StarCraft 2.
When you say personally as opposed to competitively, does the competitive part not grow you?
I grow more personally than competitively because I'm harder on myself personally than if my opponent is challenging me. Like, I think I'll challenge myself more than my opponent. They're not the ones that give me the fuel, if you know what I mean. What gives me the fuel is just my passion to be better than what I was before. And my overall goal is to be one of the best well-rounded players in StarCraft. I'm not trying to be the best. I'm just trying to be the best that I can bring into StarCraft, the way I see StarCraft. So it's slightly different.
How do you measure that? Your personal growth? Like, obviously we have the ladder and we have other methods, but like, I feel like the ladder and other tools that are built into StarCraft are very focused on competitive growth. How do you measure your internal growth that way then?
It's kind of, how do you measure it, right? It's really hard to measure, but it did take me some time to kind of think about those questions. One thing is, like, say my paintings. You can see it in my paintings, how detailed I am, the focus that I put into it, the time, the patience, and just to get to the level that I have right there. Just it shows that all the things that you learn, all the failures, they're not failures, they're just ways that teach you how to improve. And so all the things like playing the piano, music, art, structures like this, I don't even know what to do. I just think about it and I want to do it. Let's do it. I fail, I get back up, and we get it done. I could only just say that based on how I learned so far in what I do already, I transfer that into StarCraft.
Does that go the other way around? Like what you learn from StarCraft? Obviously you mentioned your art. So is it like cylindrical? As you get better in StarCraft, your art gets better?
Yeah. StarCraft to me is it teaches me so much that I also, in that case, it allows me to get further in different ways.
Right.
And by that, I wouldn't have been there without StarCraft. Believe it or not. I'm not saying StarCraft is like this and that, but it really, like I tell my viewers, it keeps my brain active. It constantly I use it like the gym. If you don't use your brain, you lose a lot of stuff. So because my brain is being constantly just trying to figure out problems and solving them, it keeps it very active. In the real world, I'm always trying to stay sharp. It's always thinking. It's always like, what can I do here? How can I strategize? Or how could I, improvise? How can I improve? You just take everything with it. So you could definitely life lessons in StarCraft. At least what I take to it.
Do you, like, after you lose or win or lose, do you have like a methodology or a habit that you do to retain any knowledge or to analyze your wins?
My brain, like I said, my brain is the strongest part of what I do. My brain is the one that comes up with most of the builds, not me. I usually dream of those. Like I wake up and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try that. Or I'm daydreaming somehow. I'm like at work, and then I'll just be daydreaming. My brain just gives me some type of vision of what I want to do now against this. Obviously, it's been trying to figure out a problem of this solution that I've been having in StarCraft, and it just says, here, I just found out an idea. All right, cool. I'll write it down real quick so I don't forget it. It's like a dream. You try it, and you keep working at it. But because I allow my brain to keep finding solutions of these obstacles that I have, it's always trying to find it, and I don't even have to tell it. It says, I got it, boss. That's what we do all the time, having to solve it. And so because you're teaching your brain to solve all the time, it's in that engagement.
With that in mind, do you do anything outside to increase the efficiency of your brain solving these problems, or you just let it be? Do you maybe focus on maybe something dietary, or how do you really help your brain work these problems out, or just leave it to be as it is?
I think a lot of it is getting to know myself, because I find that just having peace and calmness and understanding a lot of fundamentals of the good, the bad, and the ugly of StarCraft, it allows you to get better without getting distracted. Because there's a lot of distractions in StarCraft. A lot of it's emotional. I study psychology, and so because I love the mind and I love to understand who I am as a person, right? So by doing that, I was able to understand that stresses can actually keep you from remembering things in memory loss. You can't have long-term memory if you have a stressful environment. Yeah. So the more stress you have in your games, the less likely you're going to have that memory to actually solve it later on, because you're going to have suppression. And because you suppress it with stress, you're going to have trouble remembering to solve it later on, or you're going to push it away. So I like to stress myself out, but in a sense where I can control my emotions and I can get that adrenaline. Right. I'm after the adrenaline, StarCraft adrenaline junkie.
That's really interesting. So you study psychology, and then you apply that to yourself mentally when you go into the games. I'm assuming this really helps you dealing with losses, wins, ego, all that stuff kind of maybe washes away, and you get to focus on the pure improvement of the game, or yourself within the game.
Right here, look at my paintings. I did not do that overnight. You know how many mistakes I made, how much errors and stresses to get this far. I learned already that the losses are part of your growth. So don't push them away. Learn how to embrace them and use them as a strength. So StarCraft, I'm just utilizing everything I've been learning to develop, a better technique and getting better at StarCraft. And yeah, the ego is a big thing. I don't have it. I have an ego, but I don't feed it.
Did you read any particular books, or maybe have a particular style of psychological of thinking that you incorporated into yourself?
I do read sometimes psychological books. I'm more into understanding the chemical side of the brain, not just the psychological. So I've studied how chemicals interact with your brain and how your brain functions work. And if you lose a certain part of the brain, can your brain adapt, and all these little things. And one thing I did learn is that I have a brain that I could have turned off or turned on. For me, my brain is turned on. A lot of players, they're turned off, in my opinion.
When you say turned off, what does that look like in turned off? Is that turned off engaged, turned off?
To me, turned off is like when you're asleep. And so what happens is they're going to go and say, hey, I want to win. I want to be good at this game.
Right.
And they're going to go find the answers to it. And so what happens is they're going to go to a source and they're like, this is a source. This is going to give me the answers to be good. Instead of trying to experience it on my own and trying to get good, and then of course use other influences to get better. I want to cut corners even more. So what happens is you don't teach your brain to think for itself anymore. You're teaching it to listen and to pay attention to what the person that you think is got the answers, and you take it and you obey and you respond. And so because of that, your brain at some point is going to say, why do I have to think if you already are getting the answers for us?
The answers are already out there.
They're already there. I don't know.
No need to be there.
That's how addictions happen.
Right.
Your brain gets the substance outside, and then it says, well, why do I have to make this stuff? You can get it. And it's actually a little better than mine's because, for some reason, that artificial, it likes it. So it says, I'm not going to make it no more. Just go get it. Get it for us. And so your brain's going to do that. You're training your brain. Believe it or not, you're training it to either think or not think. That's why I like to have it on, even if it's a slower process, because my brain is constantly active. I'm not telling it to go to sleep. Don't worry, just go to sleep. My buddy's going to teach me how to do it. I'm just going to follow this. Just stop thinking. Everything you're thinking about, they're saying is not good. So don't do it. Just macro up, make workers, spend your money. That's what they tell me to do. That's what I'm going to do.
And that's like what people who are off. And while you think being active, that actually probably could be very exhausting. Like you would have to be really maybe focused to maintain like that kind of mental activity a lot. I would have to.
You have to know yourself. You have to be emotionally controlled. You can't have anger. You can't have frustrations. You have to understand how that anger is there and how you can eliminate it, because it's all in your mind. It's your ego you're trying to destroy, because your ego is the one that it's your friend and your enemy. So you got to make it your friend somehow.
Man, that's really, I love how deep this can go. And do you do anything like meditating? Do you do anything like to help practice outside of the game to slow your ego down, to practice bringing yourself into a place of peace?
Oh, my ego's down all the time.
It's just perpetually low.
That shit's at the bottom. I keep them there. I really do. I keep the ego down.
Wow, that's impressive.
I don't like when people encourage me in like ego boosting. The ego don't work. I don't like it. I don't like the ego. I learned that I do better without the ego than with the ego. The ego just gives me a lot of emotional issues, a lot of distractions that are really not there.
It's like I myself, like I try and I do some meditation and I do it, but every now and again my ego flares up and I have to work on it. So I look towards your.
I give a lot of philosophies in my stream. At least I don't intend to, but I guess my viewers always just remind me like, oh, that's philosophy. They enjoy it though. But I just try to speak the truth, how I got this far, and a lot of it's emotionally how I got here. It's how do you deal with this? How do you deal with ladder anxiety? What is ladder anxiety? I explain to them what ladder anxiety is and all that. So
that has to be like ego incarnate.
You would think it would be ego, but it's not always just ego. Ladder anxiety is an anxiety.
Right.
It's a stress. It's a stressor. And stressors are good and bad as long as you can control it, right? So like think of it as a roller coaster. Right. We can go up a roller coaster, you get a little stressed, right? The adrenaline starts kicking in because you get that fear, but you're still in control because it's a roller coaster. So you're getting that rush without fully fearing, but you're going to get a little fright. We don't know that rush in StarCraft. People don't know that feeling. They don't know the jitters and stuff. They think that that's a bad thing. They don't like that. Oh, what is that feeling? I don't like that feeling. It's a weird feeling. My heart's pumping. But when you learn that that's adrenaline and that's just how stress works, then you could understand how to utilize it instead of fear it, because people don't understand it's that feeling, that you get that feeling. They're like, what is it? I feel like shaky. It feels like sweaty palms.
Is it like the fear of the unknown, like the not knowing what the win or loss, the fear of the loss, the
stress,
right?
The stress. Yeah, it's a stressor. Now it could be different things for everybody. It could be the stress of the cheese. It could be the stress of the MMR, losing your MMR.
The MMR is the thing.
It's everybody has something, and if it triggers, they will get that jitter and that rush. Now, to me, like I said, I'm a StarCraft, stress junkie, so I stress myself all the time, which gives me that rush all the time, but it keeps me focused. It keeps me like, it's like getting that stim pack, just and the brain just come up with this, come up with that.
Do you create artificial stressors, or do you just put yourself in games and just consider that your stress kind of thing?
That's my stressors.
Okay,
environments. All right. My environments.
Just switching a little bit gears, like, what are the similarities? You mentioned your songwriting and you mentioned your painting. You're playing your piano, and what are the skills that Venn diagram between those and StarCraft? What are the skills that just overlap between those your three creative endeavors?
Between those things, how to get better is the biggest thing that overlaps. How to get better at something. And so what I've learned is, like in piano, like in painting, just like in StarCraft, the biggest key to getting better is to do something you love to do, right? So if I like to paint, what am I going to paint? I can try to draw stuff like a can, and I might draw it and finish half of it, and I might not even be interested. But for some reason, I like The Simpsons. So if I draw Bart, then I'm going to take some more time on it. I'm going to actually get detailed, maybe even spend an hour more than I expected because I got into it. And so what I've learned is, if you do something you actually enjoy, you're going to do more of it. And if you do more of it, you're not even going to see the time. Time flies when you're having fun. Same thing. If your time isn't flying in StarCraft, you're stressing out somehow so much. And so, this is something I learned. Just find something that you can enjoy, so that when you're having fun, you're learning. Because StarCraft, to get better, you have to play games. The more games, the better you get. It's not the other way. It's not my MMR is up here. If I don't play anymore, my MMR stays up there. But I'm kind of like worried. That's where ladder anxiety starts kicking in. You start getting into that. But you're not really having fun, because having fun is like, oh, I want to jump right back in and just do that again with a little different finesse or something. Or I want to try something. As long as you find something you're really interested in StarCraft, you'll play more and you'll have fun. If you don't, and you don't know why you're playing it, you're gonna not play it as much. Is the best way I can say it. So like in painting, I love StarCraft. Guess what? I painted StarCraft, and I did really good stuff because I said, I love StarCraft and I love painting a Zealot. I want a sick ass Zealot, and that's going to be really good. And I'll be very passionate about my success after all the things all the failures, they all turned into something good after all.
Man, my brain is just running around, because what I want to know from you is on the point of finding what you love in StarCraft, because I know somewhere out there watching this is going to say, I love winning. There's going to be people who are like, I love to win.
Yeah.
And so to be in that position or into that mental space, you kind of have to take that off the table, because you're not going to win all the time. So what is it that you may suggest, or even parts that someone may suggest that they find to love of StarCraft other than winning?
I don't know. As a kid, we always want to build stuff, right? Build stuff and build an army, build this. It's been a really big blast. And to me, StarCraft, there's that engagement of like that art of war that it has. And I guess a lot of people these days don't see it, because I guess there's games that I had in the past that allowed me to see it. And so then that way, because I seen it and understood it a little bit, I searched for it. And StarCraft, the way I play it, is very engaging, and the game gets messy. You don't know what's going to happen from this game to the next game. And because of that, there's so much adventure in StarCraft that we haven't all touched into, because we're so eager in getting, that macro side so quickly, because we're taught to do that. So we don't, to fear to lose is we're losing the fun at the same time.
It's funny, because I did an interview with Cat Rock, and he had something very similar to say, in the sense that we don't focus on the strategy enough of StarCraft, the strategy aspect of it.
Which true. What else did he say? Just so before because I look at it kind of like speedrunners, I've been saying recently. Look at the game, right? We have speedrunners in regular games.
Yeah.
What their objective is to win the game as quick as possible. They go to the shortcuts. Any shortcut to get there is the goal. You can say a regular player will be like, but that's not how you play the game. They're not after that. They're after being there, winning and getting there as fast as they could, be the world record or whatever it may be, very competitive. So there's a side where you play the game and enjoy it. And then there's a side that you can enjoy it if you are competitive and you want to get up there quick. So we have speedrunners in StarCraft. We don't see it like that. but we have speedrunners. They're the ones that are trying to get to the MMR as high as possible, as quick as possible, learn one build per race if need be, just to get up there. Whereas I play it more of a overall, enjoy it, learn every aspect, learn your macro, learn your micro, learn your aggression, learn all these little key things to get better overall. Like I see myself as all these little things are growing up in certain sections, not just one bar going up, which is my macro bar or my production bar. It's, everything's going up.
Different pieces. You're trying to raise all the boats around you.
Exactly. And that makes games way more interesting, even if you lose, because you're still having fun when you do win. After you said, when I lost, I learned something, and now I can enjoy the success.
Would you say StarCraft is a creative outlet for you?
Very creative. Very creative. So I do StarCraft more than painting, and I love painting.
Right.
My StarCraft is my art. I
was gonna say it's like StarCraft, like a canvas, and your strategies is like your brush and your
Yeah, my brush is my mechanics.
Right. Oh, yes.
My art is my units. My canvas is the map. Yes.
Right.
And my technique, of course.
Of course, your technique that cannot be forgotten. What is it that makes StarCraft so unique for you? Because obviously you and I and other people are still in this game, so I'm curious to know what keeps you here, as opposed to maybe choosing another game to express yourself.
I thought about that. And, the biggest thing, honestly, is when I play other games, like I can go buy a game right now, an average game, and get good at it in like a week or so, right? Get really pretty good to the point where it's really hard to track how good somebody else compared to you in this point. But so the scale is not very high, and I get bored very quickly because once I pass it, then there's not much competitiveness for me to like be engaged, at least for a person like I am. StarCraft, it has a lot of great things in it. The speed is actually way better than before. It allows me to actually pick up the pace quicker, but it doesn't do it too much where it's like way too boring because everybody's sticking to the masses, because I'm able to do the little things that I'm able to do even against the meta. And so that's a good thing because it gives me a challenge, but it still doesn't kick me out. It keeps the creative players in there. It's, if I wasn't in there, it's because creatives are kicked out. It just doesn't work. They don't want the creatives. They just want big armies, big speed, fast clicking, and that's it. But StarCraft does have creative. We just have to teach it more. We just have to share more. A lot of people were more in the macros, so that's what everybody's approach, speed running. Everything's going to the speed running side. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants MMRs. Whereas I do see a bigger side of creativity that has been neglected, and those players are actually enjoying my videos and enjoying, when Pig casts my games or Loco casts my games, because that is there. It's just pushed to the darkness, It's like, oh no,
I love
that's
it.
bad.
You're like the Jedi of StarCraft. You're like a Jedi of StarCraft. You're like bringing the beauty to the surface.
Yeah, but I'm like one of the sacrificed ones. I'm the one that has to take the hits. I have to be the one that looks like the noob, the scrub,
right?
That doesn't know how he's playing until things get understood better and say, okay, so he does know how to play. It's just that he plays it differently. Okay, so let me look at it in different eyes. And they go, oh, you know what? That actually was a good move. Oh, that one's a good move too. I actually misunderstood this play. He actually thinks about this game more than I do. The layers are more deeper in his games than 5 of my games put together.
That actually is an interesting idea in the sense that, let's say, as StarCraft evolves past Blizzard is gone, and the game, much like Brood War, finds new ways for the players find new ways to evolve the game in the meta. Do you see a time where the meta of StarCraft becomes more creative and strategic? Like how you do?
I told my viewers all that a long time ago, like 3 years back. I said, with the Florencio files, with Pig casting me, I'll be able to share the StarCraft that I see that I don't see out there for some reason.
Right.
And I said I will be able to provide enough strategy, creativity, where people will eventually see that. And once you see, you can't unsee, which was my philosophy. My philosophy was, if they watch the Florencio files, when they see something, they're going to know that it's possible. And when they get into that environment in the game, they'll be able to do it. Then they'll be able to do this because they see Florencio do it. Then I saw Florencio do this. So because I saw it already, my brain's already going to be adaptive to that. It's not going to be like, oh, I don't know what to do here because I don't have an actual understand. That's why people laugh when they're in stress sometimes, or when they're crying. They don't know how to engage a scenario because
Right.
they've never been in that environment before. So the body laughs sometimes, and you're like, oh, why is that laughing? That's not. But that's actually, they're not happy, but they don't know the environment. So when you see something, it's easier to engage than if you didn't. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna give them the creative. I'm gonna give them the strategies, and I'm gonna make sure that it's good where people are gonna like it, and they're gonna see a better side of StarCraft and go, you know what? Let's go to that side, because that actually is more chaotic, but yet it has, is not figured out yet.
Yeah. Is there something like? Is it almost like I think is it the 4-minute mile that like people don't think they can do it until it's done, and then you kind of show it, and then more people feel more.
Yeah, the stigma with StarCraft is that you can't play creative and get to masters.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I did it without upgrades. I did it without standard play. I did it without hotkeys. I did it freestyle. I did it so many different ways that I was like, I need, for people to see this and say and believe that they could do it too. That the border is just a emotional.
It's like it's an invisible
distraction. It's not there.
It's
You
not
don't
real.
know the player's skill. You might be better, but you might think not, because you haven't played enough, and so the border doesn't give it to you, or the border gave it to him higher just out of chance. So there's all that distraction. So I just kind of like just put it where it's at. Say, this is where it's at. You're wise enough to see it and understand if it's good or not.
Right.
You're well enough in StarCraft to like it or not like it. So, and they like it. It gives so many ideas out there that they're playing jazz now. Now I got a lot of players like, hey, I got to a higher level because I did your strategies more than the other one. And I think it's not because mine was better. I think because they had more fun, and they played more, and they got up there than doing the boring stuff, and then not getting stressed out and not knowing how can I have fun with this game.
Is there a time when you were particularly proud of like one of your fans that was playing your style, or is there any time particularly that you remember that really highlighted one of your fans, or someone who said to you, Florencio, I learned this from you?
Oh, every one of them. I do this for the viewers, for the ones that want to get better. So like every one of them that said, that message on stream, I remember, and it means a lot. It's a great feeling. There's it's not even that. It's also through the whole COVID. I put a lot of work to make sure there's videos out, and a lot of people are like, "Thank you for letting me get through this." Put a smile on my face. So I never realized how much a smile can do for so much. And
like, obviously, you're very comfortable with how your path you've taken and where you've had to go. Was there ever a time you was forced to kind of reevaluate whether this was the right path?
In what way? In what are you talking?
Do you ever find yourself in a situation where it might have been easier or more rewarding, or maybe even more successful to go a different path than the one, and you found yourself questioning your path?
No, I never questioned, but I did have people ask that question where it would be considered questioning. But no, I'm always confident in what I do. I told my viewers, I said, because one of my viewers a long time ago, they go, Flo, why don't you just go into tournaments and just do your builds and don't share it with anybody? You got so many builds that you can just literally like win a lot of games without people even understanding what was going to happen. It's like, why don't you just do that? And I go, well, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to share different builds, because, one day I'm not going to be here, and there's going to be people that are going to be able to utilize things that I've learned. They're going to enjoy the game. And to me, that's more rewarding than for me to take advantage of it.
That's such a wholesome mission. And I'd like to ask my guests this question. If you could change one thing about the game StarCraft, whether it's, let's say you had a magic wand, you can change anything, what would you change?
I would change the workers, going back to like StarCraft 1, where you have to actually grab them and put them into the mineral line. Same thing with the buildings, that you won't be able to like select all the buildings, and you'd have to do them individually, or hockey them individually, or find another strategic way to do it. That'll allow us to slow down the game, but not slow down the game. It's just going to allow us to multitask more, which is going to allow more crazier strategies and less easy big army beats bigger army, or you know how that works. So I think that those things are subtle, are gonna make more complications than just making things easy to just do. It's gonna be more war in the game if I can't just have a hotkey for all 12 gateways and just warp them really quick. You get me?
Interesting. Yeah.
It'll be way more fun. I would definitely say it's more engaging. It's more colorful. Because if you do it the way StarCraft is right now, where it's like selecting this too easily, selecting that, yeah, it could be an art in its own self, but is it the one we're looking for in RTS regarding real-time strategy? You know what I mean? I think we minimize that, the creativity will show more, because the longer the game goes in chaos, the more creative you can get, and the more layers are in there, because there's just so many possibilities in chaos.
And we're wrapping up to come to the end of our show, or our segment. What would you say to somebody picking up the game StarCraft right now and they're feeling lost? What would be your advice to them?
Watch the Florential files on YouTube.
That is like the best.
Do it.
Do it. Make sure you do it. Make sure you do it.
Watch Loco and Winter too. Look at all the Florentials on search. You'll have some fun times. Trust me.
All right.